Okay, so we are live. Thank you for joining us today on Change by the Minute. We'll start with an introduction. So, who are you and what do you do?
Thanks for having me. I'm Nathan Nalevanko. I'm on the design and technology team at Kickstarter. Day to day, that means that I'm helping creators. These can be founders, designers, inventors of any form that are trying to bring creative projects to life. I work with them to plan their crowdfunding campaigns, align on go-to-market strategy, and kind of along the way solve any problems that somebody might have, from coming up with an idea and testing and prototyping that idea, and then eventually positioning it and launching it into the market. It's a busy and varied job. It looks different day to day, but I quite love it and keeps me curious.
And for the benefit of the audience, how did we first connect?
We met in London. I was coming there for an event, traveling. I'm based in Portland in the US. And so I was traveling to Europe for IFA, a big trade show, and coming through London to meet some of my team and do an event, crowdfunding event that we were sponsoring. In lieu of you being able to attend, I think you were maybe joining a friend's wedding. We went out to grab a nice cocktail and had a great conversation.
And so we move on to the next question, which is how have you changed your corner of the world?
It's a good one. I think where my mind goes first is the specific relationships that I have with all of the people that I work with. I really see my job, although have a background in engineering and product design and development, I am maybe problem solving first is where my career started. But nowadays, like the relationships with people, the impact I can make with all of the creator teams that I'm working with, that's what I think of how I've changed the corner of the world, is the people that I've helped, the projects that I've helped bring to life, the brands and companies that I've had early conversations with and helped shape a trajectory that is much bigger today than it was yesterday or last year. And I think my gravity to startups and creative projects in general is really about that kind of 0 to 1 moment. And it's a special time to be involved in anyone that has committed themselves so deeply to bringing something new to life, because it takes a lot of work. And I really value what I'm able to contribute and share among all of those creators, connecting all of those folks as it's helpful too. And I think in that way, you get to make a larger impact of all of these new things that are hopefully doing good things for the world that didn't exist before.
So, what's next?
Well, at Kickstarter, we're trying to grow our footprint and impact and get more creators on the platform. We are a public benefit corporation, so we are able to operate with goals that are beyond just profit maximization for shareholders. But at the end of the day, we still want to create more impact, work globally, get more creators launching projects, have those creators be more successful in their crowdfunding raises, all of these things. I think we're working on different ways of doing outreach, showing up in new regions around the world, just making sure that people are aware of Kickstarter, that it is a tool and platform that is available to them. We are a lot of the decisions and the way that we structure our product and business are in true service of the creator. And we allow you to maintain your audience. We don't charge any fees for using our platform. And we really are just trying to connect creators to backers and ultimately people that want to help them bring something to life. Lots of different tactics and small programs in there. Maybe one that comes to mind is revamping our ecosystem partners program. So there's so many people that are involved and maybe touch on the crowdfunding industry, but from product design and development through all of the marketing stack, from digital advertising through content and positioning and the production of all of that content. but also logistics and fulfillment and business strategy and legal strategy and all of these things. Starting a company and building a product and shipping it around the world. These are complex problems to solve, and it does take a village to do that. Yeah, that's something that we're working on now, is trying to make sure we have a comprehensive kind of database of these resources that are vetted, trusted, and have helped other creators bring things to life in the past.
And speaking specifically on that, what's the biggest hurdle between you and what's next?
Yeah, I'd say interestingly, some of our hurdle at Kickstarter is the success we've had so far. So Kickstarter was founded 17 years ago now and has had long trajectory, but there have been ebbs and flows. We are a household name. We have great brand recognition globally, and a lot of that came for free. I'll say we just went viral and we're at the perfect place and time of the internet. And a lot of the projects and companies that launched on Kickstarter, maybe especially in the 2012 to 2017 period, were household names, were in the media, where everyone was talking about Kickstarter. It was also a time of social media platforms that weren't gate kept, like early days of Instagram and other platforms. So I think nowadays we have to work harder to cut through, because their advertising does not come for free, and there are fewer platforms that don't allow you to scale in the same way that you could in those earlier days. And yeah, I think we're always trying to advocate for more hands to help do the work. We have a very small team. Kickstarter itself is less than 100 people, and that's across a lot of different functions. My team in design and tech is only 4 people, and that's globally. So there's thousands of creators to work with, and we're trying to expand that number. And yeah, we're trying to figure out how to do it efficiently and smartly. And yeah, so those are the problems I'm trying to solve right now.
And so you've mentioned design and tech, and I'm sure it's something we've heard a lot of from other people as well. But what do you see as the biggest change for your industry this year?
There's been a lot of, I'll say, political turmoil around tariffs and global shipping and logistics. And so I think we're based in the US, but our creators are based globally. Moving products around among those regions can be complicated, and it's been even more complicated this year. And I think that it really comes down to like risk to small teams of when these big decisions are made at maybe a governmental level, the teams need time to react, that you're inheriting costs that are maybe 10x what you were expecting. Like, you can't really roll with that, especially when you're just getting off the ground. And so yeah, I think a lot of the kind of medium to larger companies they're very savvy. They have teams of people that know how to operate these systems legally, but also very smartly, in a way that they could avoid some of these costs. But that really only comes with scale and expertise that just small teams are not going to be able to react to. Yeah, it's something that we've tried to create some tools and definitely education around to help connect to partners that are good and set up to navigate this. But yeah, it was a big curveball for anyone making products this year. Luckily, I think this could have been a horrific moment, and quite a few teams have weathered the storm, and it wasn't a mass casualty of startups either. And yeah, I think we're continuing to see the kind of winds of the economy change here, but I'm happy to see how folks have adapted and continue to be successful.
On a slight tangent on that, have you seen a change then with the tariffs that US companies have become more insular to try and weather the storm, as you said? So instead of looking at international customers, they've kept US products to the US, at least for now.
Maybe where applicable, but that's very rare because it's a global supply chain. Even if you're American made, most of the time the component parts are coming from somewhere else in the world. And this, I think, what is so complicated, and I think folks that are in this world are frustrated by politicians that don't fully understand the nature of it. But it's that we have for decades shifted the manufacturing and supply chain infrastructure around the world. And so it isn't an overnight change to say, hey, we're just going to make this thing in the US, for example, and we're only going to offer it in the US. I think for any team, even before tariffs, they may not want to ship internationally just because it's too complicated for them, and taxes and VAT in Europe. But there's lots of different layers of this. And yeah, some folks might not want to even think about that, and it constrains the size of their potential market. But I think it's more of a right sizing of their company and operations that they choose to offer. I don't know that I think like maybe a media spin has been around things like this, or like in Canada, for example, I know there's like a resurgence of Canadian made and Canadian brands and rebuking American brands that are selling within Canada. But at the end of the day, all of those products, the raw materials going into those, the things that we're talking about are not just coming from one country. Very rarely, only in the most simple products.
Back to the questions we had. What is something that has changed your mind in the last month?
I'm going to be a guest on a podcast that talks about AI in 2025. I think I have taken, along with other technology hype cycles, AI with a sober view. It's happening over the course of years. We're seeing like dramatic improvements in the abilities of these large language models, maybe answering a question that was similar in response to what I might be able to get in like a standard web search. But now I think it's ingested enough information, and the logic of the models are getting to a place of understanding how to connect the dots between all of that information. And it's an increasingly temporary scraping podcast transcripts and YouTube videos and places that are disparate sources of information, but have very niche knowledge. And it takes a lot of work for somebody to do that research to answer certain questions. I think I definitely see this as a co-development and a partnership with technology. Like, you still need a skilled operator, an expert that is able to cut through the noise of a response. I think there's a lot to be done with the format of responses and the kind of rhythmic nature of them, and you have to force them to not just to give you compliments the entire time and tell you you're the greatest human alive.
So now we move on to the final few questions. And what is the change you most want to see in the world?
Yeah, earlier in my career, I was pretty hooked on the climate crisis problem and trying to solve this in the ways that I could, really focusing on environmental systems and energy systems and policy around that, and all of the roles and players of that. Technology certainly has a role there. As my career has shifted out of environmental practices and into more products, I see this as more of a, at the meta level, just everybody working together. It's like governments working together and people working together at every level, companies collaborating, partnerships forming, NGOs and nonprofits, and everybody playing a role. And it leaves me fulfilled and not just in a despair of existential depression that I'll never solve this problem that's way bigger than me, and all of the complexity that surrounds something like climate change. I think that, and I've seen this happen, of you and I connecting globally. It's all very personal relationships, but people that have been working together a long time, they're making a difference, partnering together. And as different as maybe our countries seem, we really have a lot in common, but more in common than not. And I think travel helps to do that. Working globally in business and on projects together helps to do that. And yeah, I think that's the kind of shining a small light on this. But I think it can be scaled up too. It's a simple system of connecting to people, understanding where they're coming from, offering help to them in not an extractive way, but a truly authentic and helping way. Yeah, I think that scaled up can break down walls and create lasting change and shift things in the direction, a positive direction for the future. That, yeah, I'm optimistic we can get there.
And it's so good that you've chosen something that feels attainable. There are so many problems in the world in so many different spheres, but magnitude's greater when if you look at it as one person versus this whole problem. So, on to the next question. What's something that never fails to change your mood?
Nature. Yeah. So I've lived around and for university and work life and things, but I now live in the mountains. I've built a house out in the Cascades in Washington State. And yeah, love to be surrounded in nature. It is my church, if you will. And yeah, I think finding a balance between like technology and rapid pace startup life and global business and all of these things. But yeah, also I have to spend enough time outside daily and weekly in order to recharge. I think with more digital comes required analog time and space. And yeah, I think that I'm always happier when I've at least taken a stroll outside. But yeah, I also like to be a bit more immersed, more wilderness moments help too.
So, Nathan, you've worked with a lot of people in a lot of different industries and startups, and what would you recommend to people who might have been committed to one industry but have a idea or feel the need to change careers?
Yeah, I think maybe the sage advice is to follow your heart. But I think what I might say is follow your mind. Curiosity has always led me to the next thing that I'm working on. I do like to explore a space, and when I get to a certain sufficiency of understanding that space, I start to peek around, and you're always inspired by things that are around you or you're reading or whatever it may be. I think I've always had a logical connection in my mind of why I was making a career switch. I started in chemical engineering and went into mechanical engineering and then got a master's in environmental engineering, and now I work in physical products. And so all of those things they felt linear to me, but it's hard to tell that story to somebody on your resume of like why these things. But I think in all of that, it's hard to change careers. The world wants to label you and say that this is what you're an expert in. The economy is always looking for experts. And so being a generalist, even with maybe deep knowledge in different areas, takes work, but I think it's worth it. There are a lot of concepts that are shared among different worlds, from the environment to innovation and technology to policy. I like to dabble and explore and test and run small tests and prototype in order to see where I can start to get traction. It's very similar to bringing a new product to market and seeing if you can find an audience for it. You get real insight from the world, and it's really easy to toil in your head and get lost in your own thoughts. But whenever you get real feedback, that can help to steer you in a way that, yeah, I think is somewhat controlled, but also serendipitous. And I think that those two things both required, yeah, for success.
I wholeheartedly agree. There's something I'm trying to help people with the Changely individual journeys and helping people career switch. It's so easy to overlook your core strengths because they've been almost gifted to you. You overlook what many people would see as things that are very useful in business. So having someone else hold a mirror and say, I think you will be quite suited to this particular role. If your interest is in this industry.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful way of putting it. And I think being intentional is great, but also having a process and a methodology and a philosophy that you resign yourself to is also freeing. And I think the way you just put that, I totally agree with.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been lovely
Yeah.
having you speak. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys are working on next year and keeping an eye on those Kickstarter projects and any, whether it's a project or outreach that you guys are doing, just keeping an eye on that.